Alright, so today's video is going to cover a list of changes that I feel are the most necessary and pressing fixes which should be implemented into Red Dead Redemption 2 Online and that specific mode. A lot of feedback recently has suggested that I am being too negative about the game, and it's just a beta, and thus criticism, whether constructive or not, is unjustified, unnecessary, and unhelpful. There is a lot of truth to that, mostly in the sense that my own personal tone regarding many games trends towards skepticism and caution, for the simple fact that overhype is far more damaging in every conceivable way to underhype. But regardless of that fact, I find that a more constructive video to produce is one with all the suggested aggregate feedback from both myself and from the community at large, that I have been able to gather at least, regarding necessary fixes to the Red Dead 2 Online mode, which is currently, in my opinion, in very poor condition. Before going further, however, despite there being very valid criticism leveled regarding my tone, delivery, and content as a whole, we need to set something straight. The term beta is not impenetrable armor. It is very likely in this circumstance that it means absolutely nothing. I could and may perhaps be wrong about this, but within the current industry, the word beta has become something entirely different than what gamers pretend it to be. Firstly, the words beta and demo have started to morph into a demented hybrid, where beta access is sometimes tacked onto pre-orders literal days before release when no mechanics will be changed, no adjustments made, and progress can even carry over, yet still, ignorant players parrot the word back and forth like it is some kind of shield against critics. Where once, what seems like an age ago honestly, demo discs would be slotted into the backs of certain gaming publications, offering a smaller slice of content to potential players for free in order to gauge their interest, now game demos are just renamed as betas and tacked onto the pre-order bundles for many titles in order to spike their early sales numbers. Furthermore, certain titles will use the term beta, or alternatively at times early access, as a permanent shield, when in fact the game has been in a full release state for years. A great example of this is Warframe. The game has been out for many years, with numerous massive updates over that period, and some fantastic material added, but the game still carries the tag of beta, which is completely and utterly meaningless. For fans and players, hiding behind the word beta in the modern industry is a mark of total ignorance. For developers, though, it's very smart to do. There are legitimate cases of games offering actual beta versions which result in feedback, meaningful development tweaks, and conform to the once standard definition of the term, but those instances are few and far between. For Red Dead 2 Online, a feedback portal is open. Certain requested changes have been made already, and regardless of whether or not the word beta is being used properly or merely tacked on as a buzzword, we do have the opportunity to spur positive change in the mode when concern is voiced with enough relative volume. The recent economic changes that were made will undoubtedly be referenced by some as obvious proof that the game is a proper beta, but I would urge them to wake up to the fact that none of those changes would have occurred without the extremely vocal community feedback. The minute gamers stop avidly asserting themselves and requesting changes to their benefit is the very same minute the positive changes that improve their experience slow down or stop completely. Being content with the game's current state and sitting back with the attitude of
"It's just a beta, they will do so many amazing things, don't be so critical,"
is the worst possible sentiment and opinion to hold, and it's nearly akin to fighting directly against your own self-interests as a consumer. If you don't like my intensity or my tone, I really don't give a shit. Complain about it in the comments so that I can go ahead and still not give a shit. Regardless, now we can move on to the most pressing changes I believe are critical to Red Dead Redemption 2 Online. The first thing needed, and this almost goes without saying, is a remedy to the disconnection issues. The mode is unplayable for some. It's perfectly fine for others, but a great deal of players are unable to play for more than 10 minutes straight without disconnecting and losing travel distance or failing activities. It's obvious this is a priority and will be fixed, so it hardly even counts to say, but it is above all else the most obvious first change. After that, however, we get into mechanical balancing and activity adjustments. Though I would be unlikely to use it ever hardly myself, an expansion on the parlay system is needed. With active radar blip tracking and large disproportionate posses inhabiting the same world as solo players, griefing definitely exists. The parlay system really is a fantastic tactic to help handle some of that problem, but an expansion to further protect players in those instances where multiple malicious parties really double down is in fact needed. It could take the form of a passive mode or solo servers, but a slight expansion at least beyond the single target 10-minute parlay system is quite needed for many players. The next fix is relatively minor and also rendered slightly less important by the already improved payouts for player versus player playlist matches, but player versus player queuable matches should not consume a player's own ammunition. Additionally, for certain ammo types like shotguns, due to the frequency of lootable shells, there is a desperate need for carry capacity to be increased. 60, even more, up to 100 or 120 shells is not enough to do very many activities without being forced to visit post offices or gun shops to re-up on your ammunition. Furthermore, PvP playlists consume player ammo, and while they do also offer a purchase option in the menu, that purchase option sometimes disappears mere seconds after the post-game menu even opens, making it a race against the clock just to refill the ammo you should not have even consumed in the first place during the match. It's a small change, but it would certainly have a decently positive impact on the PvP playlist experience. Next is free aim, or some comparable fix to the auto aim being active at any strength in any activity for every single player. The auto aim mechanic is fantastic in the single player mode, and without proper controller analog dead zone adjustments and acceleration changes, it is quite difficult to play the game without the auto aim, but in an open world shared PvP experience, auto aim creates a horrible sense of pacing. Fights end almost every time in a split second. A lot comes down to which exact weapon variant you are using, what the rate of fire is, and the relative accuracy zoom rate, and also how fast your thumb can flick a fraction of an inch upwards, which is not very much. That is the entirety of the game's player versus player right now, and without some form of either dedicated free aim server selection or a comparable adjustment of some kind, a large subset of the player base will be unable to enjoy the game to its fullest. After that, we come to further activity add-ons, and this is slightly less cut and dry because many state, loudly and obnoxiously all the time, it's a beta, but small, simple activities like player versus player Texas Hold'em, or Blackjack, or similar mini-games will be very, very meaningful for a lot of players. Much akin to free aim, a hardcore mode of some kind would serve the game well. A mode that removes the HUD and other casualized information mechanisms, leaving players without a direct player GPS tracking system, without the core system displayed, and provides a more immersive, difficult environment specifically for those players that wish to participate and also face others who are doing the same. The interest for this type of mode may be quite low, and thus it should be prioritized in a flexible way so as not to eclipse other more meaningful changes, but it could hold a great deal of appeal for some players that are currently less than impressed. Next, in some form, in any capacity, is passive income. This one is extremely vague, but currently all we have are passive expenses, stable, camp, etc. But any form of passive residual income from investment, camp upgrades, certain missions, truly anything, would go a very long way in terms of offsetting some of the all too numerous and very uncomfortable currency sinks that are currently all we have. Passive investment or upgrade pathways also serve as an emphasized incentive to grind for because of their scaling and continued benefit, which can stack higher and higher. A large time investment towards passive income makes the entire rest of your playtime feel better and better based on a platform of original, meaningful grinding, and meaningful grinding is severely lacking at the moment. Now moving on to bounties. This is a bit more abstract because bounties are likely coming in some form or another, but because of the current economic state, manual dollar reward bounty postings on other players would be a legitimate way to earn, and it would spur a large amount of interest. Of course, the system would need to be looked at from a potential grief angle, such as repeatedly placing bounties on a target so that they are hunted day in and day out by the entire server, but a system to mitigate that is fairly straightforward and could be as simple as just a timer. Furthermore, a bounty system would also bring to life a whole segment of role-playing potential for those that want to embody either side of the law to its fullest. You could always hunt bounty targets, or inversely, group up with hunted outlaws and defend against those that would seek to claim the prize money. The current state of the open world leaves players with no positive or negative outcome from fighting. No rewards, no penalties almost whatsoever, nothing but aimless, meaningless fighting, spawning 2 inches away from one another, fighting again until one player perhaps parlays, or you get bored having wasted a bunch of ammo and time with absolutely no gain or system participation whatsoever. With a bounty system and further tweaks around it, participation in open world PvP would start to hold meaning, opening up the entire map to potentially valuable activity. The honor bar is an interesting system in the sense of split mission outcomes, but, and here is where we go down the rabbit hole a little bit, more emphasis needs to be placed on what it does in a persistent way. Right now, it's almost as if it does not exist in the majority of your time. Instead, having some sort of duality choice-based system that persists even in the open world could open up many doors for players. It is, after all, a depiction of lawless versus law-abiding, and some players seek to uphold the law while others break it at every turn. When viewed through such a lens, it almost resembles a double-sided faction war, and if that idea is embraced even slightly, with tiny tweaks to existing systems, it could go a very long way towards making the entire world interesting, even without giant batches of new material. There is a lot of potential for the mode. The vocal advocates for that fact are most certainly correct, but as it stands, there is not enough, not only quantity-wise, but quality-wise. Keep offering feedback, keep being vocal, and positive changes will continue to roll through. But if too many players hunker down behind a misunderstood relative definition of the term beta in this context when applied to this mode, then the game will not improve nearly as much or as quickly as it otherwise could. Whatever your beliefs are regarding Red Dead 2 Online, trying to specifically silence others that voice concern, feedback, or even criticism of the game makes you categorically, unconditionally, and unapologetically wrong on all counts. No one can force other players to give feedback in line with their own personal preferences. You may disagree completely with everything I've said in this video, and think that the game is perfectly amazing right now, needs less activities and more general griefing. I would never understand how you thought that, but still, if that is your perceived digital better world, voice that feedback and help shape the game's direction. Don't let anyone tell you ever, it's just a beta, wait and see. Should those players even be correct, and the word beta is not just a misused buzzword, then they should in fact be excluded from the beta offering entirely, because they are offering up no feedback. They're silencing those that are, and in essence, they're undermining the purpose of the mode that they claim so fervently to be designed specifically for what they are discouraging. Anyways, that will wrap up this video. Those are my proposed changes, my thoughts on the most immediate and valuable adjustments they could make, as well as my commentary on the current state of the community and the misuse of the term beta. If you want to support the channel, check out the links down below. We have a Facebook community, Discord server, gaming forums, and more. You're welcome to join us in all of those areas. As always, thank you for watching. I'll stop rambling there, and have a nice night.